But most importantly, in 1976, Reg White and John Osborne from Brightlingsea, in a Brightlingsea-built boat, the Brightlingsea design, won, I think it was the only second medal. Colin, you were there? Yeah. It was only the second medal won in the Olympics.
Tidal power, since
tidal power is
since they go under the water and just
turbines in the water are very expensive to install, and there's very few places where you've got enough tide to make it.
Well, there's ones that basically go with the current like that, and then the kinetic energy.
The tidal barrage is where you let the tide in, shut the gate, and then it goes out through a turbine. If we were to have, we will have another Thames estuary barrier. That would be really good to have tidal barrage power generation.
Basically, it's like that. As the waves go like that, the motion that it's doing actually.
So wave power.
Yes.
Wave power is very, very difficult to capture. I think wave power might work on very small scale. It's a fast path to capture not very much energy. I mean, there's a lot of energy in waves, but it's very, very difficult to capture. These are still very, very expensive early technologies. Tidal barrage is the most potent.
I'm with you.
Do you think politicians or peers should be allowed to make decisions which they may financially benefit from?
Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes it's impossible. For example, I mean, there are quite a few farmers in the House of Commons. It'd be a bit silly if farmers weren't allowed to take part in debates about farming, because they actually know about farming. For example, when we vote on taxes, we're changing our own taxes. So that's impossible, we can't separate that. But if you're saying, suppose I'm on the side, I'm working for a company, I shouldn't be involved in a government contract that has anything to do with that company. Absolutely not.
So that's more what I was talking about.
And we have very, very strict rules about declarations of interest. So any outside earnings I have, you can go and look at the website in the House of Commons, it's all there. I mean, I earn a bit of outside earnings from journalism, that's just about it. And you'll also see that the people who make donations to the Conservative Party through me, they're on there as well, so you can see what they do. And if I speak in the House of Commons on anything relating to those interests, I have to declare that interest, and I might have to vote because my party tells me that we need you to vote on this to have a majority, but it's transparent. And if I was a minister, and I left the job as a minister, and the same applies to civil servants, I would have to take another job. So I left the job as a minister to take a job in the outside world. I would have to ask permission of a committee before I could take that job to make sure that there's no conflict. So we have a pretty good system. I think it could be improved, and my committee went to Canada and produced a report about how this whole conflicts of interest thing could be improved. We think we should have a statutory conflicts of interest commissioner, like the Canadians. It shouldn't just be voluntary and informal. But in the end, we have a pretty squeaky clean system. If you look at the global index of corrupt countries, okay, in terms of cleanliness, we're about 8th from the top.
What about Tony Blair making a stonking load of money after he left?
That's a very good question. But if somebody's left public life, after a period, first of all, they're entitled to make a living. And secondly, if he rakes it in by exploiting all his contacts, I mean, I think that's more of a problem for him than for us, because it doesn't do his reputation any good. I mean, John Major does remarkably little of that sort of thing, and he could do much more, and I think I rather admire him for that. In the end, you can't, I mean, if you're a doctor in the health service and you retire and want to do something else, does that mean you can't use your skills that you've got in the health service and the training you've got as a doctor to earn a living doing something else? I don't think anyone would say that. So people have got to be able to earn a living.
Yes, Bernard.
It's about how transparent it is.
But Bernard, there's a difference between a living and tens and tens and tens of millions and millions of pounds going to, as these guys see it, the former Prime Minister of Britain. The conclusion is going to be that he set this up while he was in office, he returned from office, and that taints you all today.
Well, I didn't vote for him.
Well, no, indeed, but
In the end, if he's got a problem, it's his problem. There's a limit to how much you can control. Otherwise, if you were to say, right, everybody who's ever been a minister or a prime minister, their life is going to be controlled like this forever. Well, you'd never get anybody to be prime minister. I mean, being prime minister wrecks your life anyway. Can you think of a prime minister that's been happy after they've been prime minister? I can't.
Fair point. Thank you, sir.
I'd like to know what you can bring to the table to help either new people or youngsters persuade to vote for you.
Well, I think the most important thing that my party is doing for young people is giving people the prospect of a job. And while all the economies on Europe have been shedding jobs, and they've got chronic unemployment, particularly in Southern Europe, 50% youth unemployment, we are reducing the unemployment. The employment rates in our economy are higher than they've ever been before, and even though we've been shedding public sector jobs, the private sector has generated about 2 million new jobs. They're not all brilliant jobs, they're quite a lot of low-paid jobs, some part-time jobs, but the best opportunity a young person is going to have in life is to be in employment. To have the habit of work. What is happening in Spain and Italy and Greece and Portugal is a tragedy, because half the young people of those countries are going to go through 10 years of their lives never having a job. They will probably never work. And I see this in parts of my constituency where there is a culture that people don't work. And it's dreadful, because you could take them, and I've seen this, you take them to a job, where people get them into a job, and they can't adapt to getting up in the morning on time and going doing something for somebody else. They have not done it ever in their lives, they're never going to adapt. So I think the most important thing we are doing is getting young people into jobs. It's brutal, it's not particularly glamorous, but I think that's the most important thing we can possibly do. And we've tried to do things like cut tax on young people in work, provide apprenticeships to encourage people to get into work, and the contracts you get in the job centre, it's not an option for you to just go and collect the benefit and go home. If you're going to collect the job seekers allowance, you have to sign a contract, and I tell you that people in the job centres have really got into this. I think there's some side effects. People with mental illness or people with learning difficulties sometimes get mashed up by this system, and I think we've got to look at how we handle that, because some people can't handle these contracts. They're not up to it. And you miss the bus to one appointment. You start losing your benefit when it's not your fault. I think we've got to look at the fairness of this, but the principle that if you're going to collect job seekers allowance, you've actually got to you've got to really work to try and find a job, and I think it's very tough on young people, some young people, particularly if they haven't had the education that they should have had. So you're trying to say something else.
Yeah, the only thing is, unfortunately, I suffer through depression, and partly the reason being is because of looking for jobs. And the thing I found very hard is, number one, this 0 contracted hours, and number two, not even getting a simple letter from the company to say, unfortunately, you haven't got a job. I find it hard to even open a laptop and look for jobs. I don't want to be on ESA, I don't want to be depressed, but I find it hard day to day just looking for jobs, and it could be a simple thing of like not even getting a letter to say sorry you haven't got the job, or even, you know, sorry you haven't got an interview, just things like that. How can you or try and help them youngsters, you know, at least get some sort of confidence in their lives?
I think you're describing a very difficult problem. What we have been doing is training people in the job centres to try and give you that support. Where do you live?
Harwich.
In Harwich. And I know the guy that runs the job centre in Harwich. And you could come and see your MP, and we could talk about it, and I could see what I could do to help you. And I'm really grateful you came along this evening and told us that, because I need to meet people like you and learn from people like you how we can improve the system. Thank you. And good luck with your job. Congratulations for keeping trying. I really admire it.
Indeed, indeed.
And I've written a book for young people who've failed at school or been failed at school and are in the position you're in. And I too admire the way you've come here tonight with people who are not perhaps your political allies, and you've expressed yourself courteously but clearly and directly. Well done.
Well done.
Well done.
What we'll do, just to let you know, there are some people who do want to go and expected to be leaving by about now, which is fair enough. But Bernard and the others will be around, so if you want to carry on discussion with a few questions, but I think you've been the most persistent, quiet person.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I work for a local charity. I work with people with disabilities. And over the last 7 years, we have found it more and more of a struggle with services being cut, families not getting the access to the things they should be entitled to, that help with education, diagnosis, you know, all these things. And we see more and more families in crisis every day, you know, and these are families that are at their wits' end. Is there plans to help these families more? You know, are we going to continue going down this road of things seem to be getting worse for them, and families are more reliant on people like us charities to pick up the pieces, and it almost seems that services are reliant a lot more on charities these days as well, to almost mull over everything and you know, help put a sticking plaster on it, because that's literally, you know, what we do, and help families fight their corner. So I wonder, you know, what is the position on things getting better for people with disabilities?
Well, I mean, during the downsizing of national and local government, is one of the unfortunate casualties has been the grants that local authorities give to charitable organisations. And it is, you know, unfortunately, it's human nature, isn't it? They'll always cut things outside the organisation rather than cut things inside the organisation in order to build upon sustaining the support for those things outside the organisation. It's very difficult. I mean, we have one or two county councils here on which I expect your funding has in the past depended. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, it's not just about our funding though, I'm talking about services in general, education, health, you know, mental health services, social activities, you know, there's not a lot out there.
I think that this is all part of the, as we live in a more austere public sector, we need to understand much better what is value. And for example, squeeze on mental health, which goes largely unnoticed. I mean, I saw the figures for Essex mental health a few months ago. It is quite horrendous. I mean, they're miracle workers. They're producing so much with so much less than they had before. But obviously more people are falling through the cracks. I think the answer is, how come some parts of the public sector are working miracles, but other parts of the public sector, which have hardly been cut at all, still look rather bloated? And how do we redistribute the resources? I mean, I can't talk about your particular case. Your general question is a very, very painful question. And if we want, you know, I don't want to live in a society where families can't cope, where people like you are working so hard and getting so little support and reward for what you do. But I have got no easy answer. That's my honest truth.
I can just speak quickly for what we're doing in tendering. Believe it or not, this is a nice thing to report back. This tendering has a system of dealing with, be careful of my words here, it's dealing with families which have problems. And the problems sometimes are just so far-reaching, and we did some work on it about 4 years ago, and you can end up with a family where the husband may be out of work, the wife may be out of work. That inevitably leads to the kids having troubles at school sometimes. There's sometimes a problem at school, and there's a problem with their health. So what we did is we collected, I think we collected 25 families that we identified in this area. And we sat round with all the agencies, because what you're ending up with is that family has a demand on a whole range of agencies, just from school boards to police, to probation service, to health, to doctors. And the average cost we found, and this is tough to believe, but the average cost to the community is about one of those typical, and nobody wants to be in that position, everybody has great sympathy, was about £150,000 a year
For each family.
each family. And so we brought together all the agencies, and we've done it, and we're running through family after family, and we've got that cost down to 50,000, which is still a lot of money, and that's excluding benefits. That's it. But that is the way. It's bringing together the agencies, and we've done such a decent job that we're now lecturing other areas. I'd love to talk to you later on. That's something we're very keen on in tendering. But I can see there's one or two people.
Can I just say one other thing? There is actually Cabinet Office, which is a department of government, there is a Troubled Families Initiative, which is looking at how certain types of family just cost the taxpayer a huge sum of money, and they get so little out of it. All that money gets diverted. How that money can be much better spent, and indeed how.
And it's about providing the services that are right for them. It has to be individualised to that family.
And how to break the cycle so they don't hand all these problems on to the next generation.
Absolutely.
And there are these families, and God, none of us ever want to be there, and none of us ever think that we'd even swap places with these people, because they do have issues. But there has to be sometimes an introduction of an element of self.
Absolutely, you have to help yourself.
Yeah, you have to have a confidence in yourself, you have to have a confidence in your own ability.
And it's about empowering
and you have to begin.
Yeah.
I could make myself really unpopular by saying there has to be an element of everybody saying, well, what can the council do for me, what can the government do for me? There has to be somebody in there saying, well, actually, before I go down that route, what can I do for myself?
It's about trying to create a different kind of leadership.
And that's done. And that gets back to exactly what I think it was you over there. Number one priority has to be to give you a job and then a roof over your head. All the other of society's ills won't go away, but if you have a job that you're proud of and you get paid, as Bernard says, you get up at night and do this, and you get there and you have your own. If you have a job, and you have a roof over your head that's decent, then everything else doesn't disappear, but it's a really good start. So I'm going to call a halt, if that's all right. But yeah.
Good luck with everything. Come and see me if you want. We'll have a chat. Okay. Because I do a surgery in Harwich.
Go around that way.
Thanks for bringing these guys along. No, it was absolutely wonderful. People are inspired to have you. It's it's totally ad hoc decision making. Do you want to have a meeting like this? Yeah. 16th of March.
I've sent you. You do that. Tom knows.
Forgive me.
I think electric cars,
And I probably will.
all of the contributors.
And a musician.
Using who? So he's in 16th of March.
I haven't checked. The problem is that Parliament sits on it. Oh, right, okay.
He needs a little bit more than watching.
I know.
But, I mean, if I can get there, I'll get there. It's rather not
No, I didn't mean that. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I didn't mean that. Oh, are you going?
Yeah, I thought you didn't know you wanted me to stop.
This is confidential information. You'll have